This podcast is a production of Unfiltered Studios. If you would like to know more about joining Unfiltered Studios, please visit our website at unfpod.com for more information.
Hello. Gil, Tom, JJ, and I are back in the studio after a lovely bunch of holidays. Too many to count at this rate. Stuffed ourselves with expensive food. I think we're ready to settle back in to talk about.
Yeah.
And now we're ready for a really big chew.
Your kids tonight are going in for a treat.
Yeah. We're talking about the one, the only talk show host, Ed Sullivan. This is interesting because I've seen many people vary on him. Some people thought he was a good talk show host while he was
an MC.
Right, MC, but I've seen some people just refer to him as just a host, but not just an MC, and vice versa. Some people think he's a good MC, but not much of a host. Where do you guys kind of land on him? I've seen him throughout my life, and I just always liked his attitude, but I do think the critique is kind of valid because he just had a voice, but maybe it wasn't necessarily a talk show voice, but where do you guys land on that?
To me, Ed Sullivan was a guy who had a vision, and that vision was to bring entertainment to people through, either comedians, musicians, parts from a Broadway show, he always was looking out for something. And you got to think he started in 1948 with Toast to the Town, which was the forerunner to what the Ed Sullivan Show was to become. And, he had an hour on Sunday. And you got to think he was, he would bring in, comedians, there'd be bits from Broadway shows and singers and stuff like that. He really did. To me, it really didn't hit for him till he had Elvis on.
Oh.
And Elvis was on Steve Allen the week before. And Steve Allen and him were having kind of a back and forth rating site. So when he brought Elvis on, he kind of kicked the door open for rock and roll to be acceptable. Because then you would have people like Buddy Holly, Bo Diddley, all these other acts, And then when the 60s came along, you got to realize that first wave of rock and roll dies, and then he was the guy who championed a lot of black acts too, like the Temptations, the Four Tops, Ike and Tina Turner. He kicked the door open. He opened the door for them to be acceptable.
I saw that he paid for Louis Armstrong's funeral as well in Harlem. That's how close he was.
When the 60s came along, he was
Jackson 5, Stevie Wonder. He presented. Flip Wilson and Richard Pryor performed.
Flip Wilson and Richard Pryor. He had George Carlin on when George Carlin was being banned almost by a lot of places.
When did he start doing his what you'd call his natural act, I guess, as opposed to the
70?
Was it
70? 70, because I know he went on. He was
canceled by 71. So
So it had to be 70, early 71. Carlin is doing the whole, the hair bit, the hair poem.
Yes.
And he brings him on. But the thing Sullivan is mostly known for is having the Beatles on. And his thing was he was in England. He was going through Heathrow Airport. He saw, these people on it. He's like, who's this band? Who's this? Where are they? Oh, they're for the Beatles. Now you got to realize the Beatles just come back from Sweden, where they were the opening act on a television show for some Swedish television producer or something like that. And he said, "All right, I'll sign them on for 2 shows." for like 50 grand a piece or something like that. Really low in that time.
That's nice.
And the wave
but
kicked
it's
in.
still a start compared to some of the other types, like compared to say like the Dick Clark ones where everyone was kind of hustling each other.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the thing with the difference between him and like Dick Clark was kind of a constructed moment.
Mm-hmm.
Ed Sullivan he brought them on, they got big, and then they would come back if he like, you gotta think he had the Beatles, the Stones, the Doors, who he only had on once, the Byrds.
And that was so funny because they told them not to play that risque song. And they played
it was
anyway.
one line. It was one, and if you read about it in real life, the thing with the Doors was very blown out of proportion in the Oliver Stone movie.
I imagine. Yeah.
But the word higher, I think, was the issue.
Yep. You can't get much better.
Much higher. Yeah.
Even Ed Sullivan's official site refers to him as a stone-faced, humorless MC. But see, I recall him smiling quite a lot.
I do remember him seeing pictures
of him. Straight face, yeah. But I mean, he's just the host. So I mean,
he's not. Yeah, he's not there to draw attention onto himself. Like he was there to draw attention onto the acts.
Yeah. I didn't realize he had a start in 20s radio, but that makes sense as to why he got the credentials. Other comedians who performed include Hank Williams, other singers. He had Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin, the Beatles, Jack Benny, Hank Williams Jr., and the Rolling Stones. But, Dick Van Dyke, I think I might have seen that appearance.
He was I think they were just about to do Bye Bye Birdie, so that tied in because he's in Bye Bye Birdie, Ed Sullivan.
Oh, okay. There you go. Free advertising for him.
Man, going back to Carlin for a moment, it should be pointed out that Carlin actually did a bit on his album FM AM where he talked about Ed Sullivan and did a really good impression. And the way he approached it was so brilliant. It was like it didn't matter who was on; it just had to be the wildest act you could find. And to me, that takes him away from the talk show element of it and made him more like an MC of almost like a vaudeville show.
It is kind of a vaudeville is definitely a good contrast because it's going beyond even just a variety show.
Yeah, and just everything from Topo Gigio to Senor Wences to the comedians, the musicians, to the various different acts that you could only see on Ed Sullivan. I dare say that Ed Sullivan really solidified the idea of must-see TV.
I think you can get some DVD compilations of his work, but it's not uncommon that you'll see him replayed on anywhere from like a Get TV type antenna station or a local PBS. He's just one of those kind of guys, just constantly syndicated still because there's something for everybody. Yeah. Did you hear about the time Jackie Mason was on and he banned him because Jackie Mason flipped him off?
Okay. The story goes as this. Jackie Mason was doing his act. He was preempted by a speech from President Johnson, right?
Mm-hmm. President Johnson had to give a speech, so they're telling him to wrap it up.
They're telling him to wrap it up, and he starts going, that guy's giving me 2 fingers. I'm giving him 1 finger. He's giving me 2. So I give him 2 for 3. And he wasn't bombing, but it was just kind of like they cut in. So Jackie Mason puts 1 finger up. The way it looks like he's flipping the bird off. And Jackie Mason said, there I am. There's Ed Sullivan looking at me like he's going to kill me. He doesn't know I don't know what I did. And like I didn't flip anybody off or anything like that. And
I saw there was a lawsuit, but I don't know who won.
He
was banned for 20 years from that show.
No, he wasn't banned for.
Okay, well, he ruined his my bad. He ruined his career for 20 years.
Yeah, 20
is what
years
Jackie claimed.
His career. So Jackie Mason went on, to do The World According to Me, and Jackie came back on the show, I think, in 1967 for one night. And, John Biner actually talked about it. And he was on the same show as Jackie Mason because he went downstairs and he just heard, I don't want that son of a bitch ever on our show ever again. And he really pissed me off. And he's hearing this, and Biner's going like, holy shit, what the hell happened,
Well,
I was actually surprised. Sorry,
go ahead.
I was actually surprised because I went down, I was watching some Ed Sullivan clips off of like Pluto and stuff. I was not aware that the Muppets went before 1970s.
Oh, yep. Sweet.
And they appeared in Ed Sullivan, but that's not even where they originated. They appeared in some shows before 1950 something. I didn't even know they ever went back that far.
They were originally on the Jimmy Dean show. And when Jimmy Dean went off the air, Sullivan got them. And there's some stuff on that Sullivan show the Muppets did. It's very surreal humor.
Very
especially for that time period. Yep.
Yes. Did you ever hear how Ed Sullivan once responded to New York World Telegram and Sun's critic Harriet Van Horn when she said he got to where he is by having no personality. He is the commonest common denominator.
Oh, God.
Jesus Christ.
You sent a note back saying, Dear Miss Van Horn, you bitch. Sincerely, Ed Sullivan.
Well, he didn't get along with some people, and I know
you think
one of them was Walter Winchell.
Walter Winchell.
And
okay.
Walter Winchell was a radio host.
Oh, jeez.
Who was like, "Good morning, good evening, Mr. American, all the shit to see Flash."
Right?
Yeah, he was a muckraker. He was kind of like
TMZ before it was cool.
Yeah. And what happened was that he started to say stuff about Jack Parr. Now you got to realize too, Winchell tried to launch his own variety show, and Sullivan was just like waiting for him to fail because he knew Winchell was not as captivating. He didn't have that personality about him. He would just be like, "Here you go, folks." I think the Winchell show only lasted like 2 years, and that was it. Yes. And Winchell, as you know, like died in poverty almost. From what I understand.
That's sad.
A forgotten character, But the thing with Sullivan was that he knew how to keep everybody tuned in with what he was doing, and he discovered a lot of people too.
It's good.
If you guys know about the guy who could imitate him the best, the greatest guy to imitate Ed Sullivan was a guy named Will Jordan.
Yes, and Will Jordan is named in the Carlin piece. He said most people prefer the John Biner. I prefer the Will Jordan.
The Will Jordan, yeah.
Nice. There's like they're not so subtly passing the torch to one another, kind of.
Well, the thing is, like, I think Biner and Jordan kind of got the blessing to do it. Carlin was kind of doing it like, no problem. I'll just do a quick imitation of him anyway.
But I love that when people like mention each other in their act, like it's not a diss. It's just, and now on to the next. It's this guy. He discovered me. He's just as cool. I feel like that is severely missing in today's kind of comedy, where we're right back to we gotta taunt one another.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The comedians back then he would have on Alan King. John Biner, who did one bit that cracked me up. If you guys ever watch it, it's we can only get half the act here.
There are a lot of clips on the YouTube channel, so I'm sure it's on there.
The flying Karamazov brother, and it's like he says, "Adios, he's not the same without my brother." He jumps on a seesaw like the guy's gonna fly off. He goes, "Hey, up here." He turns to goes, "He's not the same without my brother." But he did, the community. He had, I can remember him having Jackie Vernon on. Here's some slides from my last vacation. Here's Me and my wife getting off the plane. Here's my wife getting back on the plane, realizing she left her handbag on the plane. Here's the plane taking off with my wife in it.
Oh my God.
Here I am in Rome. Here I am. He would just do this thing where he's showing slides on vacation. That was his thing, but he would have and then he had all vaudeville guys on too.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I one of the clips I saw tonight was Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner doing the 2,000-year-old man.
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Love those two. So I have a funny story for you. I did not pick this because of this story, but I think you'll find this very interesting. I think what is really funny is it's also my dad's name, Cam Sullivan, Ed Sullivan. What's funny is back in the 60s in high school, there was a hall monitor who was very picky at his Iowa school, and he kept getting stopped by this picky guy, and he would always ask him, "What's your name, son?" And of course he said Ed Sullivan. He's like, "Oh, he's some kind of wise guy."
Oh, geez.
So man, he's like, the TV host, get out of here, go to the principal's office. So and finally some gym assistants, saw him. He's like, "No, he's running to gym class. He's doing what he's supposed to." He's like, "All right, I better not see you in this hallway at this time again." But I do think it's a very common name, so I do always try to clarify. Like, no, I mean the classic era TV, MC.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of his overall persona? Like, does the straight face work, or is it just he was there to host and he did a decent enough job? Like, what do you kind of take away from the most, you think, other than awesome comedy and music moments?
Basically, all I've had is a chance to see are clips, and they usually focused on the acts. So he'd be in and introduced quickly and be out, and then come back in at the end. So he didn't do a lot for what I saw.
All right, no, this is cool. I like this kind of critiques. I think he did enough. I think he has a way more persona than, say, Clive Anderson on Whose Line, who's way too dry for my taste. He's good, but he's pretty dry. And this guy, I think he does enough. Like, again, the smile is just very infectious for me. I don't know why. It's just, I feel like he really enjoyed what he did, as opposed to, hey, I'm a hot shot, I got an ego going.
I certainly read things about that.
I did see that he was a ladies' man. He liked to gamble on horses, but who didn't at that time?
Yeah, a lot of girls backstage got the pinch from Ed.
I saw that he liked long-legged dancers in particular.
Oh,
so,
yes.
huh?
Oh, yes.
You know what they say about a guy with a really big shoe?
Got this baby right here for you. I always kind of view him as like, sure, he was the MC, and sure he was there to introduce the acts and everything, but for me, it's like he was the guy who basically was looking at the entertainment industry, saying, "What's going to be big? What's going to be the next thing that comes along? What's going to be the thing that kind of shakes everybody to the core? Play it safe here, but get the other stuff on. Get the other stuff."
Definitely a precursor to the ratings game, but like you say, still under strict censorship. I'm sorry. No, it's all good.
His show was definitely a time capsule for those 20 some years that he was on. Everything that came along, and it was on his show. Anything.
Yeah. Bob Dylan still regrets not appearing on his show due to a disagreement on performing "Talking John Birch Society Blues."
Yeah.
Which I think is still a tame song. It's not a risky song.
Ed had a lot of friends in the entertainment industry who were in the John Birch Society.
Oh.
He kind of said, yeah.
So he was a communist.
No. He no.
He just
John
had
Birch,
friends.
really ultra right wing, for the 1960s.
Gotcha.
And Dylan doing that song was like, he was probably going, no, don't, no, don't, no.
Don't stir the pooch. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing about it for me is Ed Sullivan was tofu in a Chinese soup. It took on the flavor of.
I love this contrast.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the thing of it is he was also almost is a stark contrast from the way he was behind the scenes, both in his personal life, but also in his, like we mentioned earlier, with his entertainment savvy. He knew what was about to break before people knew it was about to break.
Sweet.
That showed him to be a visionary.
Had he had some other contacts, he probably could have been a record producer.
I could see him being a record, like the head of a label, but
it's a shame that once his show got canceled and his wife died, suddenly, I think it was a car crash, I think.
No.
Or just natural causes.
He died 2 years after. He kind of died forgotten. He was
73 years old, and his show, it was like 3 years after his show got canceled, and in 71. But
I have the live interviews they did when we talked about the Beatles. Just there I was in Heathrow Airport, and I knew they were going to be big. And like you could tell, he's just not feeling well. You could tell he's just, because he smoked like a chimney, from what I understand.
That's a shame.
But with Ed Sullivan, it was always like we saw the guy who was the MC, but we also saw the guy behind the scenes, the guy who was planning everything out, the guy who was saying, you get 2 minutes here. Because the first time the show went on, everybody had 10 minutes. It was 6 acts. It was an hour.
Yeah.
Then he had to learn to scale himself down and have the acts scaled down. So now you're going to go on. You're going to do, 2 minutes here. You're going to do your thing's going to be 8 minutes. You're going to be like, he would budget the time out for everybody. And that's what made him such a good MC.
That's a line producer right there.
He had the guys around him who were helping him out, going, okay, Ed, who should we have? When should we do this? When should we do that? When should we do that? It was always planned out. It wasn't like some shows where, all right, you guys go on. You guys go on. He knew how to do it. Like with the Beatles, he had them twice. Once in the first half of the show and once in the second half of the show. He didn't put them on straight away. He let that build up. You got to remember, it was that night. It was Tessie O'Shea, the cast of Oliver with Davy Jones in it.
Oh
wow! Who else was there that night?
I saw that the Beatles were on 4 different times, so they definitely owe their career. Due to the British invasion phase. So,
and with the Beatles, it was he had them on. I think the end of the first half, and then to close out the show, and with that, he kept everything building up to that point when they were going to premiere. He didn't put them off. You would have blown your cookies the first time. You kept it going. You kept everything back. You want to see those 4 guys again? Okay, wait till the end of the show. And that's what he.
So he starts off in the 50s. The broadcast studio finally gets the Ed Sullivan Theater label in 67. And, that's currently where Colbert, films his show. But it's interesting how that's just the most common, late night performing theater now.
Isn't that the one that David Letterman took over when
I think so, right?
Yep. The Ed Sullivan Theater, yep.
I saw some sitcoms that got filmed there, as well as CBS Playhouse. So, pretty awesome.
We'll return after these messages.
If you like small town mystery, crazy news, and wild history, then the Florida Men on Florida Man podcast is for you. Each week, Josh Mills and Wayne McCarty bring you the absolute best Florida has to offer. So if you're looking for a show that's safe for the family, but funny enough to help you escape everyday life, then listen to the Florida Men on Florida Man Podcast. That's Florida Men, plural, on Florida Man Podcast.
Hey, it's Brent Pope, the host of Breakfast with Brent Pope. You've seen me on some of your favorite TV shows saying things like, "Give it up, Jimmy. You got to sink this putt to win." On Breakfast with Brent Pope, I sit down with guests from the entertainment world, and we do it all over breakfast. Or should I say Brentfast? Every week on Brentfast, you get inside Hollywood info and tips, great breakfast recs and booty debates. Most of all, you get the most delightful 30 minutes of your week. So dig in. It's Brentfast time. Listen at Brentfast.com, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
That thing about Sullivan, I always look at that night with the Beatles. Ed was already on top, but this put him on the mountaintop.
Yeah.
Then, he had the R&B acts and all those guys, all those people on.
Gladys Knight.
Yeah. That pushed him. That pushed a lot of acts into, white households, which was great because a lot of those households were getting exposed to stuff they'd only heard on the radio. You got to remember at that time it was still pop and R&B. Nothing was combined yet.
Yeah.
So,
unless you went to maybe a certain jukebox, you probably weren't going to hear that. 10,000 total performances and 1,045 hours archived.
And, him putting, the Stones on, him putting the Love and Spoonful on, the Byrds, the Doors, the band,
great sound mixing, good camera angles too.
Yeah.
Whoever was doing the coverage compared to some of the other variety shows where they often would just sit still.
You got to think, what were the other variety shows on at that time? Kraft Music Hall, Hollywood Palace, right?
Mm-hmm.
You had Hullabaloo and Shindig, which, were good, but not that good.
He just picked better guests and time.
If you went to Ed Sullivan, you were there. You were in his domain, and you could either go up or go down. And a lot of 99% of the time, everybody went up.
I was just watching one today with a group called Vanilla Fudge, which I'd never heard of.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I know. I was just like, they were singing a Supreme song. It was called Keep Me Hanging On. And I was like, what the hell are these guys doing?
Yeah.
Someone had
to bring down the ratings, Gil.
You look at Ed's face after they play, he's like, who the hell booked them? But then you look at the flip side, he has the Rascals on.
Oh, God. And
the Rascals were like, high energy. They did Good Lovin' on that show. And, he was like, okay, I got them. The Mamas and the Papas were on that show.
Jeez.
Yeah, isn't that the one where the lady had an affair with someone else in the band and they broke up?
No, what happened?
Isn't that every other band? I'm not sure.
What happened was Michelle Phillips slept with Denny Doherty. Okay, she was married to John Phillips. John kicked her out of the band. They had a girl come in called Michelle Gibson, who was Lou Adler, the guy who owned ABC Dunhill Records.
Oh.
That was his girlfriend. So there's two album covers of one album cover. There's one with Michelle Phillips on it, and one with Michelle Phillips, and one with Gibson girl, right?
That's wild.
She only was in there for like 6 to 7 weeks, and then it was just like, all right, come on back in the band. Nobody's really liking what we're doing. But
what an awkward way to be reunited. You're back.
Well, she went on to do acting, I think, didn't she?
After they broke up, Michelle Phillips became an actress, and so did Denny. John, unfortunately, has his problems, and Cass died of a heart attack, not choking.
At 30, she was 30 something.
Yeah,
man.
She had crash dieted, and it affected her voice. And she was in Vegas. She couldn't sing,
I thought I heard she got their solo career started before. I mean, I don't know how long.
1970, the career started.
It's wild how that was kind of common nature. You were doing both acting and singing simultaneously, and then you get to like the 70s and 80s, and they kind of want you to pick a lane and stay in it.
Yeah, but who could? Now we cannot go any further with Mama Cass without mentioning her fantastic performance on the new Scooby-Doo mystery movies.
Yeah, with the candy bar. Holy shit! I would slap the guys that did that script if I was her. You know.
No, and no one's getting paid except Mama Cass.
Wow.
I just remember seeing that and going, you know, I saw her in real life. She was a beautiful woman in real life. You ever seen pictures of her? She wasn't that heavy. You know, she wasn't like a stick figure.
Oh,
but you know,
the first thing that comes up is a 1986 interview. She almost looks like a lookalike of a Taylor Swift type.
Who?
Michelle.
Oh, Michelle. Yeah.
If it was Mama Cass interview in '86, that would be amazing.
Well, Michelle Phillips, she had a daughter that joined the group Wilson Phillips, right?
Yeah. China Phillips is her daughter, and then it's Wendy and Carney that made that up. And then the funny thing is, the Beach Boys were on the Ed Sullivan Show too. In fact, one of the first public appearances after they kind of had a little bit of a lull in their popularity was they did Good Vibrations on the Sullivan Show.
Oh.
And it's trippy to watch. It's a really good video, you know.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I'm looking at other stuff with Michelle, and she does give me Gillian Anderson kind of vibes.
Yeah, she was
way cuter smile. No, that's awesome. So I feel like we've summed up so many things about this, but so you guys said you were able to watch clips on Pluto. I had no idea they had stuff on there.
They've got groupings, and it's like performance groupings. They've even got them like separated out. They have like one whole episode dedicated to the Muppets. So any appearances they made on the Ed Sullivan Show were put together in one group. Yeah. And then you have like a listing of
Motown
like comedians.
His website or singers has some clips, especially the Elvis ones and Supremes. I just saw a 2020 article in Rolling Stone saying that his entire catalog was hitting various streaming platforms, so that's cool to know. So, particularly the ones with the Beach Boys and Temptations.
Yeah. Well, my wife, when her mom was alive, used to listen to or used to watch the Ed Sullivan stuff on Pluto until she passed away. And my wife says, I really kind of enjoyed it. I want to continue doing it. He says, well, we can do it today because I'm going to be doing a podcast about it.
Study time.
Yeah.
And to put sort of a bow on everything, we really can't talk about Ed Sullivan, the Ed Sullivan Show, without looking at its cultural impact. It reached out into a lot of different areas. I mentioned George Carlin. There was an Ed Sullivan reference in an episode of Rocky and Bullwinkle, and just different ways it permeated the time period, society, and even the way we look at entertainment shows today.
Yeah,
you look at a show like America's Got Talent, or you look at something in like American Idol. We like to see the performances, but I think there's still something missing from the modern stuff, mainly a lot of it being talent. But
the point is,
and started doing the SpongeBob gag. No talent.
Nowadays, the entertainment is the lack of talent.
Yeah, they go with the first name that generates money, but it doesn't mean it's going to be good. And it's like, well, but they don't even want to do this, but also they can't say no, so they're going to suck it up and do this stupid thing. I think Howard Stern said he was on America's Got Talent. He's like, stupidest easy money ever made. He didn't even give a shit because there was no talent.
Yeah, exactly. I say the show America's Got Talent is America's Got Talent, but not that much.
Oh,
but but going back to the impact, I mean, will we have an American Idol without something like an Ed Sullivan Show? I'm not sure we could. There are elements of it that are still there, and I'm not even sure if the producers of today's shows like that are even aware that
they
it's
probably
there.
Don't even know about it. They're just like, "Hey, Letterman, right? That's where it all began."
Well,
no.
Well, the way I see it is, America's Got Talent and American Idol and all that can go back to a thing called Ted Mack's Amateur Hour. And I shit you not, this was an actual thing where he would have people come on and let's see how they scored, and if they got, they won a Buick if they got all the way up, and then they advance each week. Sullivan, you can kind of look at as him saying, the ring, a circus. Okay, here are the acts I have for you. This week it's okay, good. And I'm going to come out. I'm going to introduce you to the acts. I'm going to be like, here, let's hear it for these young gentlemen here.
These hair people here.
Yeah. To him, being the guy who was the MC, introducing the acts and saying, can we have a fine hand for these young gentlemen? It's like he's saying, look, I'm putting these people on for your entertainment. Give them a hand. Give them a round of applause. I'm not asking you. I'm just asking you. They worked their tails off to get here.
You say he kind of implemented the whole unwritten courtesy, studiousness,
yeah.
Kind of like on improv. Even if it doesn't work, you're still required to clap at the end of each session and then let the next performer go on stage.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll take it a step further. I'll take it a step further. I will say that the Gong Show is basically Ed Sullivan on cocaine.
Yeah.
Well, the guy
quite literally
Chuck
on
Berry,
cocaine, if you know what I mean.
I was going to say Chuck Berry. Yeah, he probably was.
Chuck Barris? Oh, yeah.
Barris, yeah, sorry.
Chuck Berry might have tried with some cocaine too, but I think he was more of a pothead.
He probably was. Oh, it was probably some of the best given his, wallet.
Yeah. And some of the things I've heard him do to people.
Yep. All our heroes are bastards. So.
Yeah, can't help but agree with you. But like Tom brought up this word zeitgeist, and that's what it is with Sullivan.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
His thing was to show the zeitgeist of American entertainment.
Totally.
What was hot, what was coming out, what was on its way up, what was not relevant anymore, but we'll put him on for old time's sake. Mm-hmm. He had a comedy act on called Schuster. What was it? What were they? Schuster and I forgot the other guy. They were on like 87 times. The most unfunny comedy act in the world, but he loved them. Wayne and Schuster. That's what it was, Wayne and Schuster. And they were a Canadian comedy act. What the hell are they? No, I'm gonna bring him on. Bring him on. He'd have them on, and people would be like, kind of laughing but not laughing. He had Charlie Brill and what was her name? They
that
were
gal.
on what?
That gal. I'm just kidding.
Charlie Brill and oh shit, bro. Mitzi McCall and Charlie Brill.
Oh, okay.
They were they were on the show like a bunch of times. In fact, they were on the show the night the Beatles came on.
Jeez.
So and I heard like Jenny Brill talk about it, like, or Mitzi McCall, or they talked about it and they said, we didn't know what was going on. It was just all these kids were screaming. We didn't know what the hell was going on. We did our then that was it. But you got to think too. He was showing America. Okay, the cross. I'm trying to put this in correct terms, but he was changing with the times. He was always changing with the times. That's the great thing about Sullivan. He was always changing. If he saw changes in music, is it bring him on? Let's see how they sound. We'll bring him on. Bring him on. Bring him on. That's the great thing about it.
Oh man.
Well, he enjoyed what he was doing. He lived close to work.
Yeah. He didn't live far.
He lived in a hotel, I think.
Yeah.
How many of us would pay to do that? Just go right across the street.
He had a top floor of a hotel or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Or a couple rooms or something like that. Him and Sylvia lived there. And then he had a house in Connecticut, I think, too.
Oh.
I was asking my wife about that because I read about the hotel. She always said he didn't have a house. She said, I don't think so. But I didn't know.
His cancellation kind of was like they were doing a thing where they were just canceling a lot of shows that were sponsored. I know he was sponsored by Ford cars or something like that. And they just said, CBS said, we're done. Your show's over. You're not coming back for next season. Thank you. Bye. They just dumped him on the side of the road.
Yeah, like you said before, it was a great start and then a very abrupt end where you're just like, what? Just like that? You're just being thrown out like garbage?
I don't think they did the right thing in canceling him like that.
At least have him go somewhere else. Like, hey, we'll give you a daytime show offer instead of, out with the old.
It was just a cold cancel because I didn't know if maybe he was getting ill or.
Well, Joan Rivers said that he was starting to lose it a little bit. So I think they were trying to lessen the blow a little bit by saying that's it, because there were rumors going around he was starting to slip a little bit mentally. I don't know how true it is, coming from Joan Rivers. She'd been on the show, but she said, yeah, he was starting to, forget things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, when you're 70-something years old and you tend to start forgetting, and you're in a business like that where you're an MC, you could say one thing and then something else happens. You're just like, oh, shit, So I think. No, go ahead.
Carlin touched on this a little bit in his act. He talked about how it was canceled while it was in rerun, so there really wasn't a final show to say thank you. And that's always stuck with me. That somebody had that much reach, that much impact on so many generations, never got a chance to officially say goodbye.
No.
Yeah.
I kind of see like Bill Paley going, well, we're canceling Ed Sullivan. You are? Yeah, why? Just feel like it's time. And even Sullivan said at some point, he's like, I should have canceled the show like 2 or 3 years before, because he felt like the show was just meandering, like just on fumes, so to speak. But I could see why a lot of the acts weren't going on anymore, because, there was not, the rock and roll acts were now too busy for him, or they'd broken up like the Beatles. So maybe it was just, a parting of the ways mutually. We don't know.
That's wild.
But Tom, you are right. There was no goodbye show. There was no final, this is it, folks. I'm done. Pow, It wasn't like Carol Burnett, where Carol Burnett, said goodbye to the camera and that was it.
You've kind of seen similar stuff nowadays where if something is Showtime would do that with some shows where they were like, hey, half our shows are syndicated now to like Universal and Fox stations. Let's kill the show now and let them pick it up, since we're not getting any subscribers. You see some streaming stations doing that, going back and forth. Hey, is it currently, airing reruns? If not, let's pick it up and then kill it once it's back on regular TV. It's all these conflicts of interest that really don't need to exist, but they do.
Yeah.
But that's wild. So he was already being syndicated, and they just figured, hey, he'll live on for the entirety of the boob tube, and we're just gonna get rid of him because he's been on a decade. So let's go.
23 years.
Two decades. Wow. Okay. So
yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah, it started 50. Was it 48? 48.
48.
Man.
Yeah.
That's
he's there with Uncle Milty, so it's like, what do you got two guys there, it was him and it was Uncle Milty, which is not bad considering, when here's a weird thing. My friend's aunt was in the audience the night the Beatles came to America.
Oh.
Yeah. And I asked her when I was doing this, what was it like seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show? She said, I don't remember. I was deaf for 2 days.
Jeez.
Have you guys ever watched that? The Ed Sullivan, the first appearance of the Beatles?
I can't remember which one I've seen, but I have no doubt that it was blaring.
Yeah, it was like, ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles, and there was a loud scream, and it was there are very few things I can compare to that moment as far as just a sheer volume of ecstasy, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, it had to be the equivalent.
I just love, they're showing like all the names of the Beatles, like, Paul, George, Ringo, John. And it cuts to John. Sorry, girls, he's married. And supposedly Lennon was like pissed off about that,
Really?
Yeah, because that was a big, big secret that him and Cynthia were married. And the thing I kind of see it as, he comes out, he says, these reporters have never seen something like this before in their lives. And so I want you to know that you'll be entertained by these young men who call themselves Beatles twice in our show. Once later, and then at the end of the set, he says, I just want you people to know that the Beatles received a telegram from Elvis and Colonel Tom Parker wishing them good luck. And I'm like thinking to myself, no, that's a telegram from Elvis saying, you MFers, you took my spotlight away from me.
Wow.
So, yeah, because look at 1964, Elvis is making Acapulco. Was it fun in Acapulco? And, they're basically just, Elvis who,
Wild.
I always remember hearing him not liking the Stones.
Yeah, because Mick Jagger, same kind of deal as Jim Morrison. He was trying to get around the risque lyrics again, and he was still just waving his finger at him saying, don't do it, don't do it. Oh, you just did it. I hate you forever. So I have no doubt that from an artist's perspective, he probably came off as an asshole. But from a host, I would like to think that given what we see, the cameras just love him.
Well, the thing is, even like the Stones, because they were scruffy. They remember, they were the opposite of the Beatles. So they come on, they meet, Ed's like going, who are these guys? They're the Rolling Stones.
Who are these guys? Get them out of here.
Tell them to get a haircut, And
he's definitely an old school kind of guy.
Supposedly, when they were going to do Let's Spend the Night Together, and he told them not to do it, they came back like 10 minutes later or an hour later, dressed in like Nazi outfits to piss him off.
Oh,
yeah,
buddy.
Yeah.
Yikes.
That's supposed to be a rumor. But Jagger said, okay, look, once you see it, let's spend some time together. Because the girls are going to be screaming and, all that. And Jagger's like, let's spend some night. And he said, let's spend the night together. Kind of went under the over the heads, he's rolling his eyes as he's singing the song. It's hilarious to watch.
I bet. That's wild.
Yeah, Jim Morrison had a line. There was something he said at the end when, Sullivan was saying, "You're not going to be on my show again." He says, "I just did it."
Right. Just the total, just passive aggressive, is like, hey, I already owned you, so don't bother.
Ray Manzarek said they got backstage, and the guy who was the stage manager, because Ed was out of sight. I think he might have said something in the scene where he said, you guys blew it. We were going to have you on for 5 more shows, and you guys just blew it. And we're never hanging on here again. And Morrison said, Gil, man, we just did the Ed Sullivan Show, and they walked off.
That's all we need. I don't have to hear it. Love it. Love these rebels. Well, this has been a delight. I think we pretty much just summed up some of the highlights. We've shown where people can find it. That's cool to know it's on Pluto now. And anyone who doesn't know, literally ask your aunts and uncles, grandparents if they're still with you. Just sit down, watch it. It's very accessible even today. It's a good trip back in time. It really is rewarding.
Definitely a time capsule.
Yeah.
Total time capsule.
It's a history lesson.
It really is a history lesson, yeah.
When the show ended, I was like 20 days away from turning 4. So
whoa.
Man.
I wasn't even born yet. My mother and my father would talk about Ed Sullivan. Like, do you remember that comic being on Ed Sullivan? Yeah, I remember him. Yeah, he had like my dad. I got to thank my dad for telling me about Will Jordan. Because I got to see Will Jordan on video do Sullivan. And then I saw Jackie Mason do, Sullivan. And his Jackie Mason Sullivan was him with him putting the hand under the chin and just like kind of staggering back and forth on stage. Because he says that's what Sullivan was. He just would. And the thing I got to say is, when I look at Sullivan on stage, when he's out there, he's looking at that audience going, I got you. Come on in, sit down. Let's watch some stuff,
Definitely a good job by Will Jordan in doing all those impressions of Ed.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, thank you all. That was a quick and fun, to the point kind of retro trip.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening. It's a jacked up